Welcome to the Big O Show on the Overreaction Sports Network, powered by Believe.
Still the same damn kid from Oklahoma, same old dreams hanging off my shoulders, wishing and waiting on a shooting star for all to see.
And now your host, straight out of Oklahoma, former Buffalo Bill, Jerry Ostrowski.
I'm still the same damn kid from Oklahoma.
Welcome in, everybody. Day night here on the Overreaction Buffalo Sports Network, powered by Believe. I am the Big O, Jerry Ostrowski, and it's time for the Big O Show as we break down this week's matchup with the Tennessee Titans. And after a big win on Monday night in the Meadowlands in New Jersey, Bills take down the New York Jets 23-20. Well, we just dive right into it. Josh Allen has new toys to play with, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, as well as we'll get to Dr. Brad Bowen from Driven Physical Therapy and Performance to talk about the, I thought the injury report was shrinking. I have a feeling it's getting a little bit bigger, and it's involving some players that we really don't want to see on that list. So we'll talk to Dr. Bowen about that as well. But again, Sunday afternoon, it is an afternoon matchup in Orchard Park. Weather's getting crisp. Weather's getting cool. Sunday afternoon football, 1 p.m. Nothing like it as the Tennessee Titans at 1-4, led by new head coach Brian Callahan. They come into town to take on your 4-2 Buffalo Bills. Again, that's 1 o'clock Eastern time, 12 Central in Highmark Stadium. Bills are a 9-point favorite. Over-under is 41 points. And got a lot to I think the Bills will really benefit from a game like this with Tennessee, because Tennessee does some things. They're not – yes, their record is not very good, but they're not that bad of a football team. It's almost one of these teams where if they had a very, very good quarterback, record probably quite different. Their division's not very tough. Played the Colts last week. They have played some decent teams, played Green Bay earlier in the season. But this is a team that maybe is not quite as bad as their record. And if you look at both of these teams, last 5 matchups, the Bills won 41-7 in Buffalo in 2022. Bills lost in Tennessee the last 2 times after that. And then again, those other 2 times in 19 and 18, Bills win. So whoever playing at home seems to be the team that wins. I can attest to that. Last time I played against the Titans, we won't talk about the game very much, but we did lose down in Nashville. If you look at these 2 teams, again, Bills, they are 4-2, 2-0 at home, 2-2 on the road. Tennessee 0-3 at home, 1-1 on the road. And if you look at points scored per game, Bills still rolling at 7th in the NFL at 27.5 points per game. Tennessee 19.2 comes into 21st. And then you look at points allowed, Bills 11th with 21 given up. And Tennessee defensively pretty good, and we'll talk about that defense in a little bit. They're 13th, giving up 22 points per game. Again, not quite the opponents that the Bills have faced, but still a solid defense. Takeaways, Bills 3rd in the league, +8. Tennessee 31st, -7. They have a problem turning the football over. Will Levis has a problem turning the football over. Passing yards per game, Bills only at 25th, 186 yards per game, but we kind of understand that scheme that Joe Brady's been putting in, and now maybe a little bit of reprieve coming from Cleveland. We'll talk about that after we get to Dr. Bowen. Passing yards per game by Tennessee, again, 31st, only 135 yards a game. Bills 11th in rushing in the league, 123 yards per game. Tennessee comes in at 13th at 118. So that's where this might help the Bills maybe prep a little bit as the season goes on, help this team kind of shore up that run defense they've had a little bit of issues with. Definitely had some issues with on Monday night. Defensive pass yards, Bills 15th. Tennessee only giving up 137 yards per game. That is number 1 in the NFL against the pass. Bills come in at 140 yards per game rushing. Yards allowed, that's 23rd. Tennessee, only 111. They come in 9th. So this is a team that plays pretty good defense out of that 3-4 scheme. We'll talk a little bit about that as the show goes on. But right now, let's bring in my good friend here. He is Dr. Brad Bowen from Driven Physical Therapy and Performance. Dr. Bowen, man, tell me a little bit about what you got going on, man. People don't understand this time of the year for you.
It's getting busy for me, Jerry. I've been grinding this week. We got soccer seasons, football seasons coming towards playoffs as we get there, and we got people needing to get fixed up. We got to keep the stars on the field. So I've been busy off the field as well.
Well, hey, man, bear with me because they only got 53 on the roster, and I feel like half of them are on this injury list. So let me read this list off real quick to you, and then you can get into some of the people you want to talk about, and I'll ask you a few questions. But obviously, Josh Allen, no glove today. He's feeling good. Terrell Bernard, Peck, limited. I don't know why we're talking about him. He made some plays, some pretty big splash plays, real kind of ballistic type stuff that you could tell he put stress on the arms, those types of things. He's not having any issues. James Cook, the toe, he's limited on Wednesday, but he was full practice today. Ray Davis, new to that list, calf injury, must have happened in practice. He was limited. Reggie Gilliam also limited with a hamstring. Matt Collins limited with a shoulder. Austin Johnson's back full. Tyron Johnson was limited, but we saw the way he played, and right away after he got back in the flow of things, made a huge impact on Monday night. Daquan Jones, the defensive tackle, foot, vet rest day. He did not participate. Dalton Kincaid on that list with a collarbone. And right away you think collarbone, you think fracture. We'll talk about that with you in a minute because there's a lot more stuff that can happen. He was limited. McGovern also with a shoulder. He was full. Quentin Morris been on there forever. He's fine. Ed Oliver did get out of the red jersey today, was hitting the pads, was driving, was using that leg. He was limited. Khalil Shakir, full practice. He's full go, as well as Trubisky. So where do you want to start with on that list, Brad?
Let's start with Kincaid because that's kind of an odd one. You don't usually see collarbone in a guy that's limited in practice that week. Usually a collarbone means fracture, as you already said. So I went back and I looked at that play, and he got hurt with 15 minutes left in the fourth quarter. At least that's where I think he bumped it up. And he caught that pass behind the line of scrimmage, was going down the left sideline, ran into a defender hard with his right shoulder. And then as he was getting tackled, he had a guy land on his left shoulder, and Kincaid was kind of perpendicular to the ground. So he was sideways on his left shoulder, guy landing on his right and kind of compressing that shoulder together. So what I think happened, and why you see clavicle on there, collarbone on the injury list instead and him limited, is that he probably injured that sternoclavicular joint. So kind of right here where the clavicle meets the center of your sternum, you have a bunch of ligaments that hold that together, provide stability for the clavicle, and can certainly be painful when injured. A guy like that should still be able to play, but anything from a pass blocking, getting your arms out in front of you standpoint to arms overhead is still going to require a lot of rotation at that clavicle and could certainly give him some problems, but nothing a little medication on game day couldn't fix so long as everything is pretty stable. I think that's why we see him as a limited participant today.
Well, Dr. Bowen, I was accused of maybe being a little too informative and needed to dumb some things down by a certain person that we both know and love. But I'm going to go ahead and act smart right now because there's no other way to ask this question.
Yeah.
And it goes like this. Most people think of joints as something that moves around, right? And when I mean joints, I'm talking body joints, knees, shoulders, elbows, things that have movement in them. But is it not true that we do have joints in our body, like in the clavicle or the shoulder area, not only the sternoclavicular joint, but also something like the AC joint, a acromioclavicular joint, that they are joints, but they're static, and you can still have injuries to non-moving joints. Is that not true?
Yep, joints that just purely provide stability. They don't do a whole lot other than that. That's exactly true. And I don't know which one, AC joint or sternoclavicular, which one I'd rather have. But hopefully, whatever Dalton Kincaid had is mild because we need him to start eating, as they say.
I'll answer that question for you. I'll take the AC joint over the sternoclavicular any day of the week. That needle guy doesn't need to go very far to get to where it needs to be. What else you got for us, Dr. Bowen?
Let's talk about James Cook. I think he's an interesting one. So Cook was out last week with a toe. His agent had reported that he was going to play, so I think that might have been a case of a sticky situation between agent and team potentially. He probably could have played last week if he's going to be full go this week. But I would expect to see him out there this weekend and wheeling and dealing at 100%. I think that might have just been some messy stuff between the agent and team potentially. What do you think?
I think probably, especially when a guy comes off the bench like Ray Davis and performs the way he does. All of a sudden, people get healthy real quick. And what's funny is even the star guys, a guy like Cook, who we all know we're relying on, they want to get back out on the field and make people remember who they are, right? It's the old what DiMaggio, Wally Pipp story that we heard for years about that whole thing in baseball. That's a whole nother show. But anyway, when you start talking about that toe, I do have to ask this: if the thing continues to linger and does not get better and becomes chronic over time, what can you do to repair or fix a turf toe?
Surgery is always an option, right? You can go in there and do the classic cleanup, as everyone likes to say. A cleanup would basically just be a debridement of the joint if there's joint tissue that's a little bit messy, cartilage being that tissue that I'm talking about, or if those sesamoid bones or tendons are giving him a problem at the bottom of the foot, you can do a repair or removal of those sesamoid bones and repair those ligaments. But you're talking about things that then take months at that point. So my guess is if that's a big long-term problem for Cook, they're going to try to nurse it along this season. And if you got a guy like Ray Davis waiting, based on what we saw last week, Cook's going to do everything he can to keep playing and not become RB2 or RB3 here.
Right, exactly. And we don't anticipate that at all. But I do get it's the competitive nature of the athlete. You played the game of football. You understand what it's like. You don't like to sit on the sidelines and watch somebody else in your spot. And we're ready for Cook to get back. I mean, think about it. Him healthy, Davis healthy in the same backfield could be epic. You got to see Ed Oliver do some stuff today. Feel optimistic we'll see him this week?
I don't know. I'm hit or miss with this one because I saw the video that Alex Brasky posted, and part of it is good and part of it to me is bad. So the good part is he was out there, was hitting the bag, and he looked like he was moving pretty speedy. The bad part is if I watch old videos of Ed Oliver getting off the ball, his spine was very neutral, his back was very flat. If you go back and watch that video, his lower back was kind of rounded forward, if you can see that. And what that does is it takes a lot of pressure off that lead leg hamstring. So I think he's still compensating a little bit, whether we want to believe it or not. And it also might indicate to me that because of how he's doing that with his pelvis, that it might be a little bit more of a proximal strain, as I had thought before, which would be a little bit more problematic for somebody at his position because that's his lead leg right there. His left leg's forward. So we will see. I'm not going to hold my breath on Oliver playing this week, but hopefully at least by the following.
Exactly, and I think that you start getting into these different situations. I don't think people understand so much what's better is 75%, maybe 80% Ed Oliver better than the other guys you have playing. I don't know. I mean, I do know this: 17 games a long season. Why rush a guy back if you don't have to? That was a great point about the spine angle. Because obviously, if that spine angle is up like that or whatever around the back, you're not dropping those hips, which therefore you're not engaging that as much. And no, that's a great point. Any other stuff on the injury report you want to touch on before we get out of here?
Yeah, let's make McGovern our last guy. So McGovern had an interesting play too. Going back to shoulder, I believe is what he was listed as, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So with about 8:30 left in the fourth quarter, McGovern was kind of chasing a play left to right into kind of the flats, and he ended up getting hit by our own ball carrier, Ray Davis. Ray Davis lowered the shoulder, not intentionally hitting McGovern, but collided with him and caught McGovern's left shoulder. And he hit McGovern's shoulder kind of from the top down as they were both falling forward. Kind of thinking mild AC joint sprain again. So there could be a lot of needles pulled out this week for certain players. Shoot it up, get it feeling at least a little bit better for the game and keep moving. Now, the good news was when he had subsequent plays after that, he was still pushing people. He was still moving well. So it was kind of like he rolled the shoulder. He didn't look totally comfortable, but he did shrug it off.
Yeah, exactly. And, I think people also, I want to kind of make a point. We talk about medicating injuries and things like that, things that could be, considered taboo. But the science has changed. Things are changed. Doctors are never going to put players in a position where it's a danger to themselves. But it is part of the NFL. It's part of life. And there are some injuries that you can play through with a little bit of help. And those AC joints and sternoclavicular things, those types of things we were talking about earlier, I think Brad will attest to it. Those are the types of injuries that are a little bit easier to do that with, are they not?
Yeah, you're a lot less likely to harm any athletes, especially with certain positional players with doing something like that, but you're going to make them a lot more comfortable. And to me, a comfortable athlete is less likely to get injured even worse than an athlete who's out there playing with an arm that hurts but might not necessarily be awful.
He is Dr. Brad Bowen, driven physical therapy and performance. Dr. Bowen, let everybody know where they can get you. And they better call, because the way it sounds in the week you've had, there ain't many spots open.
Not this week and not next week, but give me a call and we'll get you in as soon as we can. My website is drivenptperformance.com, and you give me a shout at 716-341-9694.
Dr. Brad Bowen, he's here every week on the Big O Show on Thursday nights on the Overreaction Buffalo Sports Network, powered by Believe. Brad, have a good rest of the week. We'll talk to you next week, all right?
You too, Jerry. Go Bills.
All right, go Bills. So he's Brad Bowen of Driven Physical Therapy and Performance. Awesome guy. And just a little bit of background about Dr. Bowen. He played football. He played the offensive line in college. He's one of us. La Cosa Nostra, this thing of ours, right? He's an offensive lineman. So I appreciate him. I already know that he's smarter than everybody else because he plays the position where you got to be the smartest. So all kidding aside, Dr. Bowen gives us great insight every week here on the show. We're so happy to have the opportunity to have him here with us on the Big O Show. So again, we're playing the Tennessee Titans this week, 1 o'clock Eastern, 12 o'clock Central, Highmark Stadium, Orchard Park, New York. It's a Sunday afternoon home game for the Bills. 1-4 Titans. I'm telling you, they're better than their record. We'll get into their team in a little bit. But one thing I want to talk about before we move much further down the road is Josh Allen gets a new weapon this week. Brandon Beane goes out. You guys call him Triple B, Big Baller Bean. He does Big Baller Bean things. He makes the trade with Cleveland. They've been in talks for quite a while. It sounds like about a month or so where this possibly might have happened. They finally make it happen. And Cooper comes over from Cleveland. And the thing about it is this. It's, Cleveland took his contract, converted most of it. You know this, folks. You've been following it. You know the deal. Converted most of his contract over to signing bonus. His contract's worth like $800,000 to $900,000. Absolute steal for a 10-year vet like Amari Cooper. And when you look at this football team and what they need, this guy fits perfectly. You look at a 10-year vet, a guy that can bring more leadership in that room. Even though there's older guys like Matt Collins and Curtis Samuel, okay, there's really not a true blue, and I know Shakir, but he's still young. There's really not a true blue dog, a true blue leader in that room. Now you got Amari Cooper to come in and kind of take that role over time as he gets comfortable with Josh Allen, as he gets comfortable with Joe Brady in the offense. He gets comfortable being in that wide receiver room. That leadership will come to the forefront. The other thing that Cooper brings to this team, he is good versus man coverage. He gets separation. Okay, last year was his worst year of separation in the league at 2.2 yards of separation per route. But 2.2 is not bad, and he can even do better than that. And I think bringing him out of Cleveland, a situation where it was kind of dire straits, Deshaun Watson situation, all the negativity, losing games, not a lot of opportunities to shine at the wide receiver spot because of who's throwing you the ball, you kind of tend to lose motivation. Even though he's a vet, he does things the right way. It's human nature, folks. It's the way things go. So you bring a guy in, get separation, really good against man. I went back, looked at his 2023 numbers on PFF. He was 20th overall in the league. So still a very viable receiver considering the number of young stars in this football league. 20th on a Cleveland team in the roster that they had. Joe Flacco throwing the ball. Now, we know Flacco's good, but still Flacco's up there. Team not great, still 20th, top 20 receiver in the league. But the thing that's really, really neat to me anyway is if you know this wide receiver room, where does it lack? It lacks downfield production. If you look at Cooper last year, 20-plus yard routes, 8 of 13. When I say routes, I'm talking about times they tried to throw him the ball. I'm not saying he didn't run more routes that deep, but times they actually targeted him. 8 of 13, 358 yards and 2 touchdowns. 10 to 20-yard routes, 29 of 54, 472 yards, 2 touchdowns. 0 to 10, 34 of 48 for 288. Okay? So this is a guy, 1,250 yards receiving, okay, 4 touchdowns in a situation that was not ideal. So Cooper's bringing to us what we need. We need a downfield threat, a guy that can get off a man. Now, with that being said, we transition over to the Tennessee Titans, and you look at this defense that, by the way, in certain things is a good defense. It's a 3-4 look. They can hop into 4-man fronts. They do hybrid stuff. It's similar to what the Ravens do. Got big run plugger in the middle, big nose guard, Devondre Sweat. Okay. You got Jeremy Simmons at one side. You got Sebastian Joseph Day at the other end. All right. They can play the 3-4 defense. They can morph into 4-man looks. But this is a team that only runs man about 28% of the time. They are in zone coverage 69.2% of the time, mostly cover 3, which is one high safety. Okay. Now, in those cover 3 looks, you can get some hits. You can get some downfield shots. You got some zone beaters you can go to. We'll talk about my keys to the game in a minute. I do have a section in there about Cooper. I'll give it away. But there will be some opportunities. But again, highly zoned team, 69%, still less zone than the Bills run, which is about 73%, but not much man. Again, a 3-4 defense. PFF grades has its defense rated 24th in the league. I think they're better than that. Okay? I think they're better than that. As far as the team goes, offensively 30th, defensively 24th, special teams 27th, 31st overall out of 32. I do think this team is better than those grades. And again, I think they're having a quarterback hangover situation with Levis. But defensively, again, some other key players on this defense. You got Kenneth Murray Jr., who came from the San Diego or the Los Angeles Chargers, Ernest Jones, Quadre Diggs in the secondary, LaJarvis Sneed also. We all know about LaJarvis Sneed, good cornerback. Arden Key at 1, weak side linebacker. And then you got Landry at the same linebacker, the other end of the 3-4. So they've got some players. But again, Murray is a key to that, is an inside guy. And then again, Sweat will put a lot of pressure on McGovern and those 2 guards because he is a big, thick dude. You're going to have to try to move him. So it'll be something for the Bills on Sunday against this defense. Look at their offense. Okay. Offensively, key players, you're talking about Will Levis. Okay. Levis is a guy that comes from Kentucky. Everybody kind of knows his story a little bit. You look at Levis, 83 of 125, 699 yards and 5 touchdowns. His number 1 target is some dude named DeAndre Hopkins, 14 receptions, only 175 yards, 1 touchdown. There are some others on that list as well. Tony Pollard is their running back, 78 rushes, 339 yards, and 3 touchdowns. And if you look at this receiver core for Tennessee, again, you got Calvin Ridley as well as Hopkins. Also, you got Tyler Boyd. You got talent, folks. Tony Pollard looks a little different than the dude that's at Baltimore now, but still Pollard, a guy that came over from the Cowboys, a guy that can do some stuff. But again, if you look at this offense, their offensive line, their running game, it's Brian Callahan is their head coach. Bill Callahan is his father. We all know Callahan from coaching in the NFL a long time, head coach of the Raiders, offensive line guy, was in Philadelphia, coached Nebraska Cornhuskers for a while. Tough, physical dude, wants to run the football, wants to be tough. Okay. Brian Callahan will throw the ball some. Okay. He comes down from Cincinnati, their former offensive coordinator. But think of the basis of this offense around power running game. And you look at some of their run schemes, you can see that. This is not a heavy zone team, okay? This is not a heavy zone team. They don't run a ton of zone, all right? What they do run is a ton of gap schemes. They like to run gap stuff. When I say gap schemes, that's power, that's counter. That's what they like to run. So you'll get a little bit of zone, but they run a lot of that old school power counter. They'll run a lot of fold blocking, try to get angles, bring a bunch of dudes on the line of scrimmage. They'll run some unbalance with the tight end and an extra offensive lineman, or the tight end and a wing, to try to get you out leveraged and make you have to play more gaps. So they're going to do some of those things to try to get our defense spread out. Now, if you watch our defense on Monday night and throughout the earlier part of the year, this is a defense that's susceptible to the run. Talked about a little bit last night on the Hump Day Hotline. There's three things that kind of all go hand in hand. Defensive line-wise, we're not big, huge physical guys. We're not tying up a bunch of blocks. Therefore, linemen are getting up, guards are getting up on our linebackers pretty quick. Our linebackers are not big physical dudes. They're fast guys. So if you get a hand or two on them, a lot of times you'll knock them off the path and you'll slow them up. And then we've got safeties playing cover 2 that are trying to roll downhill to rally to the ball. All three of those things cause some issues on our defense. But again, lots of gap scheme, not as much zone blocking. So if you look at this offensive line for Tennessee, and their center, Lloyd Cushenberry III, J.C. Latham at left tackle, Leroy Watson the fourth at right tackle. Not a lot of big names. They're decent. They're athletic. They run pretty well. I think that's why they do some of the gap scheme stuff that they do. But again, Pollard coming in for 4.3 yards per carry. Will Levis, again, he's been sacked 15 times. And he gets pressured on dropbacks 34.7% of the time. So he is under some duress, and I think he is a guy that will pull it down and bail pretty quickly when he has to. He's not going to sit back there and mess around. Kind of a one receiver guy, that college system. I know where I'm going with the ball before the ball snapped because of the coverage. If it's not there, pull it down and go. Not a whole bunch of progressions and things, and I'm sure Coach Callahan's trying to teach him and get him out of that habit. But my keys to the game before we get out of here on a Thursday on the Overreaction Buffalo Sports Network, powered by Believe. Thanks for watching. Again, hit the like button, smash that subscribe button, tell your friends. We are this close to 2,000 subs, and we want to get there quickly. Let's try to get there this week so we can get over 100 likes on this video. Let's see if we can get over 2,000 subs by the end of the week. But again, we're here because of you guys watching and listening, and we appreciate you. But my 3 keys to the game, folks. Number 1, we got to continue to pound the ball. We got to continue to pound the rock. We got to run it. We got to establish the run. Whether it's James Cook, whether it's Johnson, whether it's Ray Davis, whoever's healthy, we got to figure out a way to continue to run the ball, even against a team that is good against the run. Because when we run the ball, if you saw on Monday night, it sets everything else up. So that's the first key. We got to run the football. Second thing is this. We got to find a way to limit our opponents on big chunk plays on first down. And those big chunk plays are usually runs. We give up way too many yards on first down. We have a very, very hard time keeping people behind the sticks. Way too many times we're 3rd and 6 or less. Sitting there defensively trying to defend that is really, really hard. We've got to limit teams on first down. We got to stop the run on first down. We got to not let these guys get in 3rd and short situations. Obviously, better defensive line fits would help with that. We got to keep the linebackers off, or keep the offensive linemen off of our linebackers, and we got to get our safeties downhill, and we got to fit better. And I think that as Taron Johnson gets back and gets more confident with his arm, I think you're going to see the runs maybe start to be less and less, or not as big of yards, because he's fitting and doing the things he needs to do. I think that Williams is doing a great job next to Bernard. Those 2 guys are doing great. But again, we got to figure out how to get that secondary to fit better, rally to the football. So let's limit big chunk runs on first down. Third thing is this: special team play, guys. Special teams play. We saw a kicker get signed today on the roster on the on the practice squad. It's official. Pressure's on. Tyler Bass is going to have to produce. I went back and looked at the Monday night film. People were saying that the extra point was blocked. I don't believe it was blocked. If it was blocked, it was because the kick was low and pulled so badly that he allowed them to block it. We have not really had a ton of protection issues on the field goal. If there is one spot, and what happens in the NFL is every team gets 3 games prior. So they'll study those games. And if anybody gives up a little bit of weakness or a little bit of pressure, every week they're coming at that spot until that cycle of tape gets through and that guy gets it fixed. And it seems like right now they're putting multiple bodies over Osiris Torrance, over that one guard spot, that right guard spot. Brown plays on the left guard on PAT field goal for us. But it seems like that's where they're trying to get. If you watch that extra point that was missed, that kick was yanked on the dead left, and just not a very good kick. So we got to make sure our special teams are tight. Bass got to make kicks, and we got to limit return yards on punt returns and kickoff returns. It seems like teams get some kickoff returns on us. I'm not sure why. And then finally, when we make a big play on special teams, folks, can we please not have a penalty? We don't want any penalties. So that's my third key. And finally, my fourth key, and we talked about it before earlier on the show, Joe Brady has to figure out a way to get Cooper a small game package to where he can go out and start building his rapport with Josh Allen and maybe do some things to get some success. Do I think he's going to learn the entire playbook? And this is where the misconception lies, folks. Playbooks are pretty similar. A go ball is a go ball. A flag route's a flag route. A hitch is a hitch. Crossing route's a crossing route. Picks are picks. I mean, everybody steals from everybody. Difference is terminology, nomenclature, and then that physical relationship between you and your quarterback or you and the other receivers to know where you need to be when you see a certain look. And that's going to be the one thing that takes him the longest to learn, not anything else. So I expect him to be in the lineup on Sunday. I expect him to hit the ground running. I think Joe Brady needs to figure out a way to make a small package for him, to figure out how to get him the ball, get him involved, because this might turn into a situation where if he's getting after it, defenses start doubling him and Shakir and others are going to get freed up. So those are my 4 keys to the game. As always, folks, thanks for listening to the Big O Show here on the Overreaction Sports Network, powered by Believe. I appreciate you. Hit the like button. Smash the subscribe button. Let's get to 2,000. We're real close. Let's get over 100 likes for this video. And then as we head towards the weekend, after the game, we'll have the Overreaction postgame show, and they'll get ready for the following week. So once again, thanks, folks. I appreciate you as always. Thanks for listening. Much love. Go Bills.
I'm still the same.